So in this video, I'm gonna tell you why I think this electric bike is something special in a very saturated market right now of electric bikes. And so this is the C3STROM Astro e-bike here that is coming from a company that just got started, I think around 2 years ago, as far as trying to focus on bringing an electric bike that has style, that has flavor, and also performance. And they've done that with this bike. Spoiler alert, I really like this thing. So the first thing you're gonna notice right off the bat is the way this bike looks. It has a motorcycle style to it. So this definitely is gonna be something that when you take this on the road, I got stopped so many times with people asking me what is that, and just being a fan of what they've done with this. So it has an aluminum frame that is very sturdy, nothing is shaking or rattling on it when you are riding around, and it does come in 2 different colors, black and silver. And oh, I also will mention that this bike does come in 2 different configurations. So you have the Astro and the Astro Pro, but the only difference is going to be the battery size in those 2 bikes, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But yeah, back to the design here. I really like the way this silver looks versus the way the black looks. Both look good, but I prefer the silver. And I really like the way the kind of the middle of the frame is empty, so it's hollow, and it has this kind of a diamond shape to it. So it really adds to the style of this bike. And I think that's really what draws people to it when they first look at it. And then there are other touches, like they have their logo that's cut into the frame. And also they have the kind of like fake air intakes on the side of the seats here that do look really good. So it gives this like a nice aerodynamic type of look to it. Now, the only downside to a really cool motorcycle design like this with an e-bike is that if you are planning to take this on bike trails that do allow e-bikes, this might make it look like you are riding a motorcycle on one. So you might get stopped by park rangers or whatever a little bit more than not. But other than that, once you tell them this is an e-bike, they're probably gonna think it's pretty cool. But yeah, that's just one thing to kind of be aware of. But let's keep looking around this bad boy and take a look at some of the other features that come standard on this bike. So it does come with front and rear fenders to keep you protected if you are going off-road or you hit a puddle when you're riding in the middle of the street. And then it does have a really good headlight that is going to be bright. But yeah, it's a pretty nice headlight to keep you aware of what's going on if you are riding this at night. And this headlight does have 2 different modes to choose from, and you can switch between them on the handlebars. And one is going to be more of a tighter concentration of the light, and then one is going to be wider for more coverage, and that's going to be really good if you are riding on city streets and things. But I do like having those 2 options. Now, when you don't have the headlight on, it will still function as a daytime running light, so that's good for when you are riding in traffic, and the same thing goes for the brake light. And then something that you don't see on every e-bike is that this comes with turn signals. So on the front, you have left and right blinkers, so you can control those with the controls on the right side of the handlebars to indicate if you're going left or right. And then also on the back tail light, which also is a brake light, it will give you this nice little animation when you do have your turn signals activated. So the brake light is really cool. These turn signals are awesome. And the only kind of negative about it is that I did wish that it did have some type of audible sound or clicking noise when you do have them engaged, because sometimes I have like hit the turn signal and then I made the turn and I just forgot to turn it off. And that's part of me just kind of getting used to using turn signals on an e-bike. But if it has some type of audible tone or visual cue, that would be nice to see in the next version. Now, right below the turn signals on the handlebars, you will find an electric horn that gets loud. And then also to the right of that, you will find a twist throttle. And then on the left-hand side, you will find a twist shifter here for the Shimano 7-speed derailleur that this bike does have. Now, there is something that you probably already noticed with this shifter that I don't like, and that's the fact that it is upside down. So this definitely is made for the right-hand side of the handlebars, but because they put the twist throttle on the right-hand side, it makes sense to have this on the left-hand side. I just wish that they do find the particular model of this that is made for the left-hand side of the handlebars so it wouldn't be upside down. Now, when I was using this, when I was riding around, it wasn't a big deal at all. The numbers are just upside down and you just go the opposite way. But visually, it's just a little bit distracting. So next version, hopefully they kind of clean that up. Now, next to the shifter, you will find the controls for the 3.5-inch LCD display. So this is a nice display that did really well in direct sunlight. Now, this isn't a color display, but I do like the fact that it does rotate on the bottom between showing you your total distance travel and then also your current distance travel on the trip that you're on. Now, this bike does have a single suspension system on the front here that you can lock and unlock. So you can open it up if you want to get that bounce when you are going over rough terrain, and then you can go ahead and close it and just kind of lock it out when you are riding around on your paved city street or paved bike roads. And because this bike does not have any type of rear suspension system, the seat better be good, and I have to tell you that it is. So this is a silicone filled seat that is super cushy. And so when you sit down on this thing, you have a lot of room here because it is a long saddle right right here. And then when you do sit down on it, I haven't had any time where I was like uncomfortable when I was riding this bike for many, many miles at the time. So I'm incredibly happy with the seat. But one kind of downside to this whole design is that you can't raise this seat up and down. So if you are, depending on your height, you might find that some people like to be able to adjust the height of the seat as far as like how their feet reach the pedals, but you can't do that with this bike. So it's kind of what you see, what you get. But for me being 6 feet tall, I found that this bike was pretty comfortable. My knees were a little bit high up when I was pedaling, but overall, I found the overall ride of this bike and the way I was sitting very nice. Now look, the seat is comfortable, but I don't want to fool you in thinking that, look, if you do go extreme off-roading or mountain biking and stuff, you're not going to feel the bumps. You will feel those bumps. This is really good for just your regular streets, and you want to try to avoid those potholes if you can. But if you do hit them, it's not going to be super bad and super terrible. But for your everyday riding on paved roads, it's going to be really nice. Now you do see a rear rack on the bike that I have here, but this isn't standard. This is an optional purchase that you do need to make. But I do like it because it is perfectly designed for my chain lock that I have. It has like 4 different spots where I can kind of weave the chain in and lock it in place, and it really doesn't move that much when I am riding. But this bike rack is also useful because you can add an additional battery onto the back of this. And so C3STROM says that they will be selling additional batteries and they will be coming with a way for you to be able to secure it to the bike rack. But it's not one of those things where you can add it on there and then have that wired to the back and be able to have the bike just run off of 2 batteries. It's basically there for storage for that extra battery. So when your other battery runs out, you can go ahead and remove that and replace that with the fresh battery on the rear rack. Now that is useful, that is very convenient, but in the next version of this bike, especially the Pro model, if they can find a way to be able to allow you to have 2 batteries wired to the bike at the same time so you don't have to worry about swapping, that would make this bike even better, and I wouldn't mind paying a little bit more for that. Oh, and before I forget, the rear rack can support up to 33 pounds, so it's not the most supportive rear rack out there, but it'll be good for light loads. Now let's keep talking about the batteries. So the 2 versions of this bike, the Astro and the Astro Pro, as I mentioned before, the only difference is going to be the battery size that they come with. So on the Astro, it does come with a 780 watt-hour battery, and on the Astro Pro, it does come with a 1040 watt-hour battery, which I've been using on this bike. Now, according to the company's estimate, they say that you can get up to around 50 miles with a smaller battery and up to 78 miles with a bigger battery. Now, a lot of people always like to debate what the actual range is, and these are just estimates, and they're the best case scenario. Depending on how much you weigh, how much you're carrying, how many hills you're going up, the terrain, the wind resistance, all these things are going to factor in the actual range that you can get. Oh, and now let's talk about the wheels. So this bike does come with 2 20-inch aluminum wheels that do have a little bit of branding on them, so they look nice. And then they're wrapped in 2 20 by 4.25-inch fat tires. Now these tires are definitely still made for riding around in the streets and city roads, but they are a little bit fat where you can take them off-road a little bit and still find that you can get some fun out of these tires. But these don't have the type of treading on them where I can really feel like I can get into mud and sticky situations and be just fine like I can on other tires that come with other electric bikes. But I do like what's going to be helping you stop these tires when you are riding, and that's going to be the front and rear hydraulic disc brakes that have really great stopping power, and you really want that when you are going at high speeds with this bike. So I was really happy with the brakes. All right, so what else? Oh, let's talk about speed. So both models of this bike come with a 750 watt Bafang motor in the rear, and this bike does ship as a class 3 electric bike, meaning that the top speed is going to be 28 miles per hour out of the box. And the good thing about this is that in most places you don't need a license or any type of extra registration. You can take this thing out of the box, assemble it, which is pretty easy by the way, and then now you'll be able to go ahead and take this thing on the road. But this bike does have another trick up its sleeve, and that's the fact that you can enable an off-road mode to be able to get a faster speed. Now, in order to enable this though, you have to use the C3STROM app that you can download. So there's no way to enable this on the bike itself. And the reason for this is that once you do go into the app and enable it, it does give you a warning saying that this is really only meant for you to ride on private roads and not out in the street, because again, by enabling this, you're going over that 28 mile per hour class 3 limit. And so that means you should, get a license and some different things with it, or registration and stuff. So do it at your own caution. But once you enable it, now this bike can go faster, and let's go ahead and see how fast this is in my test. All right, so now for the speed test. So I will be using the throttle only. I have it in off-road mode and pedal assist level 5. I weigh about 220 pounds. I say about very loosely, and I have about maybe 15 pounds of camera gear in my bag. But let's see what this thing can do. In 3, 2, 1, boom, let's go. 750 watt motor. It does make a little bit of noise too, which I actually do like, with something that's kind of like a an electric motorcycle in a way, but we're at 18 miles per hour, 19 miles per hour on the GPS app. We're at now 27 miles per hour on my bike display. We're at 26 miles per hour on the GPS app. So it looks like there's about like a 3 mile per hour difference between the two. We're at about 29 miles per hour on the GPS app. We're at 34 miles per hour on the bike's display, 31 miles per hour on the GPS app. And we got up to 31.9, and we're at 35.8 on the bike's display. And I'm about to test these hydraulic disc brakes. All right, so a little bit of squeaking there. I need to adjust that. But yeah, I was able to get up to the 32 mile per hour range on my GPS display. So the bike seems a little bit more generous with the speed. But also something else to know about this bike, I think it weighs around like 95 to 98 pounds or so. So it's a pretty heavy bike. So this also means that this is not going to be something you're going to be picking up and putting in your trunk. And it might not even, you know, be able to be compatible with a lot of even electric bike racks out there. So definitely take that into consideration here. This is definitely not your average electric bike. But for a bike of this weight, the motor does push it along, as you can see with this speed test. Now, I did do a distance test, and I just used the throttle only for that test, and I did have it in off-road mode, but I kind of averaged maybe around 29 to 30 miles per hour. But I was able to get up to 32 miles just using the throttle only with this bike. And so I did go up a few hills, though. I was using it when I was recording a big portion of this review, when I was just doing this distance test. So definitely that's still pretty impressive. And so this test provides a really good baseline for the minimum that I can push this bike. So of course, when I throw in some pedal assist, I can definitely get longer. Now, are you going to get that 50 miles with the regular smaller battery, or the 78 miles with the larger battery? I can't tell you for sure. Probably not, but you definitely can get closer than just smashing down on the throttle. But I think for the size of this bike, it does a really good job for the distance and the speed. Now, something else you should know is that this does have kind of low clearance for an electric bike because it is more of that motorcycle type of style. So that means when you are taking your turns, be a little bit more cautious with the pedals. So you want to make sure you have your pedals up a little bit higher, because I did find when I did take a turn, and if my inside pedal was low to the ground, it definitely would scrape on the ground. So it didn't happen all the time, but it definitely happened enough to where when I do take turns, especially tight turns, I kind of just raise my pedal up to be a little bit more cautious of that. Now, I do want to go back and take another look at the app, because it's one of the best apps that I've used for electric bikes, which typically feel like afterthoughts, but they put a lot of thought into this one. So inside of the app, you can not only enable the off-road mode, but you can also change the pedal assist level. You can see battery information. You can control the headlights, and also you can enable the cruise control function on this bike if you just want to be able to take your hand off the throttle and just ride. And then also it does have an ability to be able to see your riding history. So you can actually start a particular trip, and then it will keep track of it on a map, and then also be able to tell you your distance traveled and your speed and information like that. So normally you have to get that information in a whole nother app, but you have that all in the C3STROM app. And that app connects to the bike via Bluetooth, so I've always had a very stable connection. And some other extra things about this bike that I do want to talk about is that it does have a 30-inch standover height. So for me being 6 feet tall, I felt when I did need to stand over it, the bar in the middle wasn't like in my stomach or anything. And the water resistance rating for this bike is rated IPX6, which is going to be good for your light rain. And if you get a little bit of wet, definitely you don't want to be riding this in a downpour or anything. But if you do get a little bit wet, wipe it off and the bike should be fine. And this bike does have a walking mode. So if you are walking alongside the bike, you can hold down on the minus button on the handlebars, and that will cause the motor to give it just a little bit of power, and that will allow the bike to kind of roll next to you running at like 2 or 3 miles per hour. And that can be good for going up very steep hills or just in some rough terrain when you're trying to move the bike from point A to point B. And so look, I think you can tell that I like this bike, but I know some people will be having some conversation about how sometimes the lines can be blurred between an electric bike and an electric motorcycle and even an electric scooter, because this bike has the characteristics of all three of those things. But one thing I will say is that C3STROM is shipping this as a Class 3 bike, and in most places here in the US, it's going to be perfectly fine. But the rider still needs to have some responsibility, because this is a heavy e-bike, even compared to other e-bike standards out there. So if you are riding on bike trails and stuff around other people, just slow down and be more responsible because of this extra weight. But when it comes to e-bikes, I do feel a little bit more comfortable on this bike compared to other bikes when I am riding with traffic, because I do have that extra power when I do need it, and I do have those turn signals and things. So it does make me feel a little bit better when I don't have a bike path and I'm riding next to a car. But overall, I think it does come down to the rider to to make sure you are responsible. But in general, everything that comes into this package with this bike is really nice and solid. Now that does bring me to another point about this bike, and that is that it is initially going to be sold as part of an Indiegogo campaign, which is crowdfunding. And when you do crowdfunding projects, or when you back them, you are taking a risk because there is a chance that the company never releases a product and they just have your money. Or there might be something where like COVID happens and the supply chain takes a really big hit and there's a really long delay with the product. But C3STROM is looking to get this bike out in the next few months, and this company is based out of Hong Kong, but they do have a LA warehouse that they will be able to ship these from in the US. So from my experience with the company, I think they're legit. I think it'll be foolish for them not to ever get this bike out because it's that good. And I think something like this, I feel very confident in the fact that they will. But again, it is crowdfunding, so I just want to let you know that. And so I'll have a link down below in the description of this video to the Indiegogo page. And when that page goes live, you will be able to see the pricing and also the delivery dates and all the other information that is still being finalized right now. Wait, hold up just 1 second. So obviously I'm filming this after I did the majority of this video, but I do have some more solid information when it comes to the pricing and the Indiegogo page. So the Indiegogo page will be launching on May 25th, and the original pricing of the Astro will be $24.99, and the Astro Pro, which I've been showing you in this video, will be $26.99. But the Indiegogo pricing is really impressive because that's going to come in for $16.99 for the Astro and $18.99 for the Astro Pro. So coming in under $2,000 with the Indiegogo pricing is definitely going to be a very attractive way to go. So again, I'll have links and stuff down below in the description for the page when it goes live. And the last two things is that this does have a 15-day return policy where you will get a full refund if you're not satisfied, and also it does come with a 1-year warranty. But outside of that, I am wrapping up this video of this Astro electric bike. What do you think about this bad boy? Leave that comment down below and let me know. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, like this video if you do like it. And like always, I do want to thank you for watching this, and I will catch you later. Peace.